Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. The story begins with a man named Ed, who is enjoying his vacation with his wife Nancy and their daughter, Cassidy. The three are on a boat not far from the beach, and Ed is teaching his daughter how to swim. The girl mentions that there's something in the water and asks her dad to stop kicking her. Ed replies that he isn't doing anything, and then he also feels something strange down there, deciding to quickly return to the boat. Nancy hears his voice in a panicked tone and runs to help them both get back on the boat. She manages to grab Cassidy, but Ed is suddenly attacked by something that pulls him down forcefully. Surfacing, he screams in pain and tries to swim back to them, but he can't make any progress as a shark is biting his leg. Nancy clings to her daughter, yelling her husband's name as he disappears again, and to her horror, he only reappears one last time before succumbing. This horrifying scene deeply traumatizes Cassidy and causes nightmares well into adulthood. The trauma troubles her even more now that she is back at the site of the tragedy with her husband, Greg. He has been sent by a British museum to search for a treasure underwater. Knowing what happened to her father, Greg tells Cassidy she can stay relaxed at the hotel if she wants, but she decides to join him on the expedition. Despite this, it is evident that the trip will be difficult for her, and anything can make her nervous, even a little girl in the crowd who somewhat resembles her as a child. Arriving at the docks, Greg introduces his wife to his friend Benz, the owner of the boat that will take them to the treasure. He asks if he can bring along a couple of friends, and they say it's no problem. Pierre and Itzera introduce themselves very kindly and thank them for the ride. After everyone boards, Benz introduces his assistant Kai, warning that he isn't much of a talker. The boat then sets off, crossing the same waters where Cassidy endured the worst moments of her life. Her mind fills with memories, and she thinks of her grandfather, Seamus. Speaking to a group of students, he recounts an expedition to the Galapagos Islands where he was amazed by an aquatic plant. Fortunately, the captain was nearby when he began to stretch his fingers toward it and stopped him from touching it, which was actually a deadly species. Seamus uses the story to show the youngsters that it is always better to be more careful than it seems necessary, as it can save your life. It's then that he sees his lonely granddaughter watching the waves. Seamus decides to dismiss the class early to speak with Cassidy. She tells him about the nightmares involving Ed, and Seamus hugs her, lamenting that he doesn't know how to ease her pain. Back in the present, a radio reporter recommends caution to sailors, informing them that the area has been experiencing attacks from modern pirates. One of those ships sank recently, taking with it a substantial illegal cargo. Benz pays no mind to the news, and his passengers don't seem to have heard it either. Not far from them, a man named Jordan is on his boat when someone warns that there's another vessel nearby. The other group is in a small boat, searching for the spot where the pirate ship sank with the drugs. Armed to the teeth, they get excited upon seeing Jordan's boat, but he doesn't seem intimidated by the aggressive reception. This is because he is also a criminal, and his gang is even better equipped than the enemies. The rival group is completely eliminated in seconds. Jordan's goons invade the small boat, tossing its former crew into the sea before stealing the weapons. But the main target is the tracker, which they find well protected in a plastic container. Meanwhile, Cassidy answers a video call from her grandfather. Barely concealing her concern about this trip, Seamus says he just wanted to say hi before she loses the signal. Cassidy replies that maybe that won't happen, but it doesn't take long for her to realize she's wrong, as the signal drops before they can say goodbye. Besides Seamus, Nancy says that her daughter is no longer a child and that he needs to stop worrying. On the boat, Cassidy gets nervous upon seeing Kai preparing a shark diving cage, saying that she didn't agree to any of this and didn't know that was there. Ben starts to explain, saying he rents the cage to brave divers from time to time, but didn't intend to use it on this expedition. Cassidy feels very embarrassed and apologizes for her reaction. She didn't want to stay at the hotel because her grandfather always taught her to confront her fears without letting trauma take control. Now, the incident with the cage showed that she hasn't resolved this issue yet. Deciding to be even braver, she tells Greg she will dive with him too. He is shocked to hear this but pleased with her decision. Nearby, Jordan's goons inform him that they have reached the point indicated by the tracker. According to their calculations, there are 80 kilos of cargo down below, just waiting for someone to retrieve it. At the same time, Cassidy prepares for the dive and is somewhat surprised to hear that Benz won't be going with them. He explains that he has done this many times and prefers to enjoy the view from the surface. Benz and Kai stay on the boat while the two couples dive. Arriving at an area full of wreckage, they find what seem to be gold coins and begin to collect all that appear in their path. Itzera signals Pierre to take some pictures and starts posing in front of the debris. Suddenly, a huge shark swims by behind Pierre. Itzera panics and starts pointing in that direction, waving frantically until Pierre understands the message. He also goes into a panic as soon as he sees the marine predator, and the two swim toward the ruins, attempting to use the structure as an improvised cage. Their haste alerts the shark, which follows them immediately, lunging furiously but unable to reach its prey. Highly afraid of being there, the couple doesn't wait long enough before fleeing, and the shark returns in time to bite Pierre's arm. He begins to thrash around, trying to free himself, but this only causes him to lose his arm faster. Even underwater, his screams are so loud that they reach Cassidy, on the other side of the wreckage. Very distressed, she begins signaling to Greg, indicating that something is very wrong. Swimming to the other couple, they help Itzera bring Pierre to the surface. However, his arm is now leaving a red trail in the ocean, and this attracts danger once again. As soon as Itzera surfaces, she starts screaming the word shark to alert Benz. He helps Greg drag Pierre into the boat while the other two try to swim as fast as possible. Seeing the fearsome fin almost a meter away from Cassidy, Greg jumps into the water to help her up and is almost attacked as well. They all barely escape, but Pierre's condition is very concerning. Furthermore, Benz is shocked by the size of the shark, and Kai says that this isn't very common around here. Itzera is inconsolable watching her husband lose consciousness, knowing there is little time to save him. Then Kai shows Benz another boat, not far away, that looks more powerful than theirs. Hoping to ask for a lift and get Pierre to the hospital faster, Benz changes course and heads there to ask for help. When he gets closer, we see that the other boat belongs to Jordan. Benz explains what happened and lets him board to assess the situation. Jordan takes the chance to introduce a bearded man named Apache, along with his friends Chucky and Chasen. Seeing Pierre's condition, even Jordan is shocked but says it was only a matter of time before a great white shark appeared in those waters because no one really managed to map its migration pattern. Showing the pendant from his necklace, Jordan reveals that he also has his traumas regarding the species and keeps that memory as proof of his own courage. At this point, it is already clear that Pierre has no chance of surviving, so Benz tries to politely brush off the sinister visitor. This raises suspicions, and Jordan insists that he can still take them, reminding them that a strong wind is on the way. Seeing that Benz and Greg seem increasingly eager to shove him away, Jordan begins to change his tone and asks if any of them saw something they shouldn't have. Greg hastily says no, adding that Jordan's activities aren't their business and that they have no intention of interfering. Jordan doubts this and calls his goons, ordering them to shoot everyone into the sea. Since his divers haven't returned, he is also eyeing the cage, which could be his only chance to bring the cargo without the shark getting in the way. When Benz offers to do this in exchange for their freedom, Jordan pulls out a gun and says it's easier to get rid of him right now. It is then that Cassidy decides to intervene and asks about the weight of the cargo, explaining that the cage won't hold that along with a couple of brutes. Besides being lighter than the goons, she is an oceanographer who devoted her life to studying sharks, and there is no one who can do this job faster or better. Apache agrees with her, and Chasen quickly chimes in that he doesn't feel like being eaten today. Jordan gets annoyed with his men's cowardice but is forced to agree that this is the best option and shows her where the 4 packages should be. Without a radio, Benz warns that he will pull her up in exactly 45 minutes, so it's good she is inside the cage when that happens. Cassidy puts on the diving gear, and just hours after almost crying at the sight of the cage, she locks herself inside, and Jordan orders them to start lowering it. Firm in her grandfather's teachings about courage, she completes the descent without incident, but the shark appears as soon as the cage settles on the seabed. Moreover, a second shark arrives, and the two begin to circle Cassidy non-stop. She waits until they tire and verifies that they have indeed left before exiting. On the boat, Greg discreetly hands the coins he found in the wreckage to Kai, asking him to hide them. Then Chasen lets out a scream and points to the pair of fins in the sea. Everyone is astonished by the size of the sharks, but Jordan refuses to interrupt the operation, saying that Cassidy will only return if it's with his cargo.
She comes up with my drugs and she don't come up at all.
Indignant at such coldness, Greg tells him he is a scoundrel, and Jordan responds that that is true. Below, Cassidy begins to tie the rope to the handles of the heavy packages, always keeping an eye on her surroundings. Even so, she doesn't notice the return of the sharks until she sees them swimming very close. Knowing what will happen if she returns empty-handed, she continues tying the handles without moving too much and then starts pushing them very slowly. She is almost done securing the packages to the grate when one of the sharks spots her and swims rapidly towards her. Cassidy gets into the cage with a second to spare, closing the door just in time to escape the bite. The attack is so intense that the impact is felt even on the boat. Greg begs Jordan to raise the cage, saying that enough time has passed. Now the two sharks begin to ram against the bars, and Jordan finally agrees that it's time to pull the cage. Benz begins to crank the winch with great effort, and the sharks follow Cassidy throughout the ascent. One of them tries to grab the cargo and ends up snapping the line, causing one package to fall down to the bottom. As the cage reaches the surface, Cassidy is completely frantic, screaming that there are sharks down there. Jason reluctantly jumps into the water to get the cargo, then warns that one package is missing. Cassidy explains that the package broke and the cargo spread throughout the water, trying to convince Jordan that it would be useless to try and retrieve it.
There was a shark that came after me. Hey, I dropped the crate. It erupted. It's worthless.
The villain begins to lose his patience, but just then Jason starts screaming. Seeing that he is being attacked, the other two goons run to try to save him. Greg seizes the commotion to try to disarm Jordan but ends up thrown into the sea. Jordan still tries to shoot in his direction, missing. While Cassidy panics at the sight of her husband in the water, the entire area around the cage has already turned a Red Sea. Jordan orders Chucky to jump in to get Jason out of the water, and he does this right in front of the shark. The result of the confusion is that Jordan loses not only two goons but also all the packages, which end up breaking free. Without anyone noticing, Kai hands the coins to Cassidy and says he is sorry for Greg's loss, while Itzera also tries to comfort her. Enraged, Jason decides it's time to leave and points the gun at the two widows, saying he will eliminate the deadweight. Then Cassidy shows him the coins and explains the real reason for the trip, trying to make a new deal with the villain. Jordan thinks it's very strange that the group found treasure and returned to the boat with two miserable coins. Itzera gets outraged at the suspicion, reminding him that her biggest concern at that moment was with her shredded husband. As the thought of gold begins to enter the bandit's mind, we see that Greg is still alive. Swimming non-stop, he reaches a point where he can see the abandoned boat. Seeing Pierre being thrown off the boat, Itzera calls Jordan a monster, and he decides that now she will also dive to find the treasure.
You're a monster.
Even though Cassidy is injured and Itzera is not in a good psychological state, they are both forced to accept the plan. With great effort, Greg manages to swim to the boat and finds the pirate's radio, but no one responds on the other end. Meanwhile, Cassidy begins to suspect that Jordan hasn't revealed everything to anyone. She asks to speak to him and demands to know the truth, doubting that he is really doing all this for money. Tired of arguing with his hostage, Jordan reveals that he was in the United States Navy until he got caught with contraband and was permanently expelled. The conversation is interrupted by a panicked goon, warning that the Coast Guard is approaching. Jordan tells Cassidy that if she tries to ask for help or opens her mouth in any other way, he will take care of Benz and Itzera immediately. When the guards arrive, he pretends to be her boyfriend and says they are there with friends on a trip. Seeing the two boats tied to each other and the horrified expressions of the two women, the guard demands to see Jordan's documents. He opens a smile and says it's coming right up, but as soon as he steps away, his goons start shooting. The guards return fire, and Ben sees that Kai has been hit. Moreover, the exchange of gunfire causes an explosion, and all the guards end up being eliminated. This means time is running out. Jordan is unmoved by everyone's efforts to save Kai and orders them to hurry to reach the treasure. While Greg is getting situated on the boat and even finds a weapon, Itzera is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Cassidy does what she can to calm her down, asking her to ignore Jordan's urgency. When the two are finally ready, they dive again, this time without the cage. Benz is still trying to save his friend when Jordan appears behind him and laughs at his efforts, admitting he has no intention of honoring the deal. As soon as the girls return with their new treasure, he plans to kill all the witnesses and sail away calmly. Benz is not very surprised to hear this since he already expects the worst from him at this point. But when Jordan decides to hasten Kai's demise with a few shots, he reaches his limit and charges at him. Caught by surprise, Jordan loses his balance and tries to take down the fugitive but only manages to hit him in the shoulder. Meanwhile, Cassidy and Sarah secretly return to the surface, away from the boat, and Cassidy is still trying to keep the other from freaking out. Jordan orders Apache to go after Benz, but he is met with a harpoon. The henchman is hit and ends up in the sea still alive, but not long after, the two sharks appear to attack him and put an end to him. Sarah decides to flee from the gang and swim to shore, ignoring Cassidy's advice.
No, we can't. You need to stop moving. No!
On the boat, Jordan manages to corner Benz and hits him with another shot, saying that the captain should always sink with his ship. One of the sharks starts approaching the two women, and Cassidy begins to scream, begging Sarah to stop moving. The other can barely hear her and is practically surrounded when she senses the danger. Unable to control herself, Sarah screams and thrashes in the water, provoking the beasts even more. The sharks devour her, and Cassidy watches helplessly. Determined not to make the same mistake, she dives and removes the noisy equipment, remaining completely still. Cassidy then finds herself face to face with her most terrible fear. In her mind, the images of Ed's death blend with Seamus's words, giving her the courage to extend her hand. The beast responds to the touch with a slow curve, passing its body along her palm as if it were a loving cat. After this transformative experience, Cassidy returns to the boat and tells Jordan to go get the treasure if he wants it so badly. She is furious to see what he did to Kai, and Jordan tries to change the subject, reminding her that the boat is on fire and will sink soon. Meanwhile, Greg jumps from the boat as soon as he gets close enough and covers the rest of the distance swimming to avoid drawing attention. He boards and quietly begins to look for the criminals but is almost caught by the last goon, managing to disarm him. The two struggle, and Greg uses his opponent's knife to finish him off. At the same time, the verbal clash between Jordan and Cassidy reaches its peak. He is about to eliminate her when Greg appears and forces him to drop the weapon.
Drop it!
But then Jordan begins to doubt his courage and truly cannot pull the trigger. The villain suddenly attacks him and takes his gun.
Come on, Greg!
Greg only escapes the bullet because Cassidy grabs Jordan's gun and shoots him in the knee. Seeing that he is now in the crosshairs of both, Jordan knows that his words are his last hope, but Cassidy is fed up with them. With a shot, she knocks him off the boat, and he falls right into the midst of the sharks, who tear him apart in seconds. Overcome with emotion, Greg and Cassidy embrace, soon discovering that Benz is also alive. The three are finally free to leave and leave those waters behind. Greg tells his wife that the trauma is now his and asks to stay away from boats for a while.
Stay away from boats for a while.
2 weeks later, Cassidy visits her grandfather and swears that despite the adventures, she is okay.